Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending upon when you're watching this, whether you're watching live or watching in the replay. Welcome to Industry Insider. My name is Matt Jones. I'm the Director of Corporate Communications here at TrueCar. And before anything, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out to join this conversation. We kicked off this show here at TrueCar about 3 years ago, and the goal is to bring some of the industry's brightest minds onto the show to discuss the state of automotive, share tips and techniques that can make us all just a little bit better. And I'm very, very excited to welcome to this show the CEO and owner of Lotpop, 20 Group moderator, and author of Work the Facts, my main man, Mr. Jasen Rice.
Hello, how we doing?
Hey, Jasen, thank you so much for making the time to do this. Nice to see you. It's a pleasure as always.
I always love this show.
Well, we're trying, and with folks like you, we could make a little bit of an imprint and make things better, because this ain't the easiest business every day of the year, is it?
No, that's what makes it fun. It's a little different every day.
I love it. So before we jump in, hey, Jasen, what's going on over at Lotpop?
Think about it. Tomorrow we start our university. We actually, each month we try to do a university where I'll do a 1.5-day class. It's free. We go through all the metrics and things that we track and trend. And even if you're a client or not, it's information that you could take back to your store and apply. So we're doing that tomorrow, and it's a 1.5 days. So Tuesday, Wednesday. I give it a half a day the next day so people can fly back or get out of here. We got one coming up in April too. And then around the corner in May, we have our 20 group. We're going to wrap our university and our 20 group together. A lot of times it's a used car or Lotpop based 20 group, but a lot of times managers come in for the 20 group. They'll bring in an employee or another team member to go through the university while they're doing the 20 group. So it's good timing there. So we got that. And I appreciate TrueCar being involved. You guys sponsoring the food provided at these events. And it's always it's a great partnership. And we do provide Joe's Barbecue, #1 barbecue in the country at one point in time. So,
well, I'm a little sad out here in Long Beach that I'm not going to be there, because #1, #2, #10 barbecue in the country have my attention, in addition to all the education and getting better and all that stuff as well.
No, it's fun. It keeps me on my toes too. I like doing the event, because we get anywhere from half a dozen, a couple dozen people in each time. 20 group obviously runs a lot bigger than that, but everybody brings in some different struggles and from each of their stores or areas that they're running into. So,
well, I guess only a fool would think they can learn strictly and solely from themselves, right? And having a group around you to share, common themes. We're all going through it differently. We're all going through it the same. So, hopefully at some point I find myself in the area when you're doing one of your 20 groups or your university, and I can pop in and eat some barbecue and learn some stuff.
There you go. You're always welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you. And so, before we really jump into this conversation, I'd really like to start off by announcing here at TrueCar, we just released something called the Automotive Shoppers Trend Report. And it is a piece of data that we've collected. We're very proud of it. And it's a shopper analysis of people who are in market and plan to buy a car in the next 12 months. We surveyed more than 1,000 people who meet that criteria, people who said they want to buy a car, they're currently shopping for one. And we combine that information with shopping behavior that we see here at TrueCar and transaction data. And all of that came together to give you the Automotive Shopping Trends Report. We dropped it last week. You can check it out for yourself. I'll be putting a link up in a little while. But some of the things that we've learned from that shopping report Jasen and I are going to talk about right now. So I think probably one that's probably most fun and most interesting is, talking about who actually is a used car shopper, because there's always a conversation on who the used car shopper is. And what we found is that 7% of new leads that come into our environment, and when I say new leads, I'm saying 7% of the people who come into the TrueCar environment shopping and prospecting on a new car end up purchasing something that's used. Now, 7% may not seem like an extremely large number, but when you consider that the TrueCar platform has between 8 and 9 million visitors every month, just based on scope, that's a lot of people. And that's completely in addition to the folks who start off the journey looking for used. So, Jasen, thinking about, something that I know that you're really big on is merchandising, how a dealership, brings its used car inventory to the market. How do dealers meet the needs of these traditional used car shoppers at the same time being ready to serve people who might have like new car sensibilities? Because we're seeing new car shoppers, become used car buyers.
Yeah. Well, I guess couplefold, both with inventory, but specifically even customers. When I was selling, I had some subprime customers, and the ones that we were able to get done were like one of my best best customers, because they refer people. But I treated them like they weren't subprime. I treated them like everybody else. See, so there's that even playing field. So we should be displaying and marketing our used cars just as good as our new, and then hopefully vice versa. Sometimes new cars are coming in, they still got plastic on the seats and stuff like that, might not look as appealing, but basically marketing them the same, between the photos and the description, they should be standing tall. Like, I don't care if somebody's buying a 10 grand car, an 80 grand car, one, they should be treated the same. But also you should market them the same, make that, because that's that new car to somebody else, right? I mean, it's a new car to somebody, even if it could be a 12-year-old car with 120,000 miles. To them, it's a new car and they're proud of it. They're going to go show their friends and their family when they get home, and you don't want to mistreat that person. So both in marketing, but handling them. My wife, same thing. Her leasing a Volvo, it's up in June. She starts shopping. We dabbled around new car leasing again, but we knew availability rates and stuff, they weren't as appealing. And so we dabbled in the used cars. And the problem was, when you're dabbling in used cars, and we're talking just maybe a 35 to 50 grand, high-end SUV, when she's looking at 5-6 different models, she wants to test drive them. And matter of fact, one of the vehicles was actually at a Porsche dealership, which you would think more of a high-end, and high-end clientele and high-end service. It was kind of this theme. My wife felt like she was being annoying the girl when she kept asking hey, can I do this one? Hey, I want to come up and see this one. I don't know if it's because they didn't think we were doing anything till June when her lease is up. We ended up buying a BMW from a BMW store, and we still have kind of 2 car payments right now. It doesn't make sense, but we found a good deal. I went ahead and took advantage of it, and her lease isn't up. I don't know if she thought because our lease wasn't up till June that it was aggravating. Hey, if you're not ready yet, why kill your time? The car will be gone by the time. But we didn't know. We didn't know if we're going to buy in 2 days or 6 months.
So you weren't getting that white glove new car treatment that was befitting the environment. Because again, like to your point, it's new to you, 35 to 50. That's not, that's more than a burger and fries, right?
Yeah.
So we should probably be treating it this way. It's interesting that we saw something in it, and it talks to what you just said. Your wife was looking at 5 or 6 cars, and so of course she's going to want to test drive. We did some surveys watching shopper behavior, and we saw that the dealerships that did best with used were the dealerships that in their initial conversations with the shopper who was looking for used offered a test drive. We watched the conversations because, through our platform, and said, what sets these used car dealerships apart from these used car dealerships within the same market and, same pricing and everything. And we found the people who did the best were the ones who right up front offered the availability of a test drive, or offered the client an invitation. Really speaks to your point of 5 to 6 cars. Well, of course you want to test drive them. So I know that's a little bit off script, but we have seen that in the behavior. The folks who invite their used car shoppers in and give them a welcome, hey, come test drive, check this thing out. Those are the ones who tend to work better. But so when we think about merchandising, I know that you've got you've seen some things about like how people put cars up that are sometimes good, how people post cars that are sometimes not so good. So with cars getting more expensive, like, do you have any tips or tricks or things that you'd like to see people maybe do more of or less of when they're putting their cars up for sale?
A couple things, I guess. I hate paper floor mats, and the fact that a lot of times I'll see those, and even an $80,000 car. I think it was a high end car, and man, there's just wet, crumbled up paper floor mats. Now, if you want to do them strategically, don't put them in until you take pictures, and maybe on the floor mat is your logo and a "Why buy it from us" or something that's in the picture frame. Then that makes sense. But more times than not, it's a service rider, somebody that's pulling this car around with wet feet, or even they don't have to be wet, they get crumbled up and they're taking pictures. Yeah. So obviously little stuff like that, right now it's still, we'll go through it here. We're just talking about weather, we'll be 30 degrees here, or 20 and 30 degrees and up to 60 degrees. As that temperature changes, the tire pressure does. So between now and you'll get a lot of tire pressure warning stuff as tires inflate and deflate. You don't want that in your dash shots, and even try to avoid, the temperature gauge. Some of the time, it's funny. So I went to a 20 group and helped them. I reevaluated every one of the stores and gave them some of the things I caught in their photos. And, here we were last month in January or February, and they're up in Pennsylvania, and they had cars with trees in the background with leaves on them.
Oh,
and so
boy.
that's a telling sign saying, hey, you haven't had leaves on your trees for 3 or 4 months. There's another dealer that thought he could get away with it. He goes, oh man, I didn't think you'd find any in mine, because he kind of took him at a corner of his dealership that it was walled off and stuff. One, I could see through the windshield the trees, but the biggest giveaway was on the dash shot. The dash shot said it was 81 degrees out. Okay, so because your dash shots, use your radio, something will have navigation like northwest and then a temperature. So you could see it was 81 degrees, and it hasn't been that warm in that area again for a long time. He's like, man, I didn't think I'd have to worry about stuff like that. So just the little details, because again, that goes back into, are you paying attention to the details? Not only paying attention, but are the cars sitting on your lot, and you're not selling a lot. Like, why is this car still here? Matter of fact, again, this is the reason why we did buy a car, even though we still have a while before a lease was up. It was a car that's been on their lot for a while. My wife was worried, why is this car still here? And there's just certain reasons why cars can be there, but yeah, you don't want to give it away. It's easy. So over the next 30 to 60 days, things will move. Trees will start budding, and we'll start having leaves on the trees, and then you're gonna have to take all your winter photos and redo them again. So that'd be the time and period that I'd be really watching out for right now with the marketing stuff.
That makes perfect sense. I have this fantasy that one day I'm going to buy a single family home here in Southern California, Jason. I don't know if it's ever going to come to fruition, but it's a nice dream. And I remember people talking about, well, this is, pre-pandemic. Okay.
Yeah.
This is how you could find a deal on a house. You go to a house, and if the lawn is unkept and they're not doing this, then they just distress and they just want to get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same approach that I would probably take to looking at a used car that had, a temperature from 3 seasons ago. I would, as a savvy shopper, I would use that for leverage, or at least attempt to use that for leverage.
Well, to your point, if somebody's looking for a new car and they can't find it, and so they want to maybe switch over to used and then they see this nice used car, they think, but there's green trees in the background. It looks like it's been there for 6 months. I'm going to be more hesitant on maybe wanting to buy that, even though I'm willing to maybe switch, but I don't know.
You know what? It's a good point. So I'm glad, and I'm hoping the folks who are watching live or on the replay take note of that, because it doesn't take long to go through your inventory, take a look at your pictures, take a look at your VDP, so that maybe just set up a either omit some pictures or have your photographer come back out and put some new stuff on your space so your vehicles look fresh. Jason, you sold cars starting in 97. I started in 2001. We'd always get that high pressure water, clean off the cars, make sure they didn't look dirty and dusty. We should be doing the same thing with our online inventory.
I would say too, one of the ones a couple things that I think dealers miss is the tire shine. It's funny, especially with the, these nice wheels and tires, nowadays, you get a nice black car and you see these flat, just almost look like worn out tires. I'm like, man, you just put some wheel shine on there, it'd make a world of a difference. Just wheel shine that dang thing. And yeah, that's another one I would say, make sure you do. Because again, if you're going from new to used, that just makes that car pop a little bit more, make it look like a new car.
I think that's super important. And while we're still talking about people switching from new to used, another piece of content, or another piece that we saw in our data, which I thought was really, really compelling, was the time that it takes a used car shopper to make a transaction compared to the time it takes a traditional new car shopper. And we saw in our data that nearly 10% of people who did buy used cars ended up buying them the same day that they submitted the lead for that car, right? And so I like to actually call that day zero, because it means within 24 hours of them hitting send, 10% of those people who did buy had purchased those cars, right? And when we look at how people look at leads, and the reason I'm talking about this, because we're going to talk about leads a little bit later, is when we look at how people handle leads altogether, quite often there is a used car, or there's a lead process.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a new car lead process and a used car lead process. there's a lead process that doesn't differentiate the differences between how people buy, especially when it comes to timing and speed. So when we're having these conversations, I think it's really good to point out when we can the differences in behavior. It's not just that somebody's looking for a 2016 as opposed to a 2023. They move differently, they behave differently, and they're being, shown sometimes different versions of inventory. When was the last time we saw new car inventory that had pictures of trees in the backgrounds? You're getting stock photos usually anyway, or something that's just, a car put into a showroom. So there's a lot of things to think about. Now getting back to this question and answer stuff I've got for you, Jason. Data tells us in this market, shoppers fall into two primary buckets. There's lots of buckets, but there's two primary. And there's folks who, I'm going to call them need-based buyers. These are folks who need a car. And they're usually looking to buy, a car between 20 and 30 grand. And then we have people who are want-based shoppers. They want a car. That's usually 40 grand and up. They just want it, right?
Kind of us,
and
huh?
So, yeah, it must be nice.
Like me and my wife. They're like, well, we don't need it right now, but yeah.
But you want it, right?
Yeah.
And so these need-based shoppers say, they come to the market and, based on their surveys, are saying, the reason I'm in the market right now is because my current car is either too old or it costs too much to repair. I'm kind of being forced into the market, right? Whereas, the want-based, buyers are saying, hey, I want something new. My current car might be outdated. I want kind of the latest and greatest. Knowing that all shoppers can transition from used to new and new back to used. Thinking about a dealer that's maintaining their used car inventory, is it possible for them to actually supply the needs of the need-based shopper and the want-based shopper at the same time? Or do they have to focus on one or the other? What do you think?
Well, if you're talking like average investment dollars, meaning, the 20 grand, 30 grand or less, I think they do want to manage average investment. What's that profile they have at their store? I mean, there are some stores can have $50,000 average investment profile. I mean, BMW, Mercedes type store, and they can still turn their inventory. But if you're a Chevy, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, domestic type dealership in a rural area or in a decent sized market like Olathe, Kansas here, you probably have to have a 25 grand or less average investment. So I would be tracking, the dollar amounts of where your inventory is sitting and which ones are moving faster for one. But yeah, I mean, you go back to treating every customer the same, regardless if they're buying a 10, 20 grand car or a 50 grand car, the communications, the photo descriptions, the videos. I mean, and I think you can do both when it comes to handling a customer, regardless of their profile, their want and their need. And I think both customers would benefit from, gosh dang it, I hate to say it, above and beyond service, but it shouldn't be above and beyond. And what I mean by that is, man, I don't think the last time we talked, I had this example, but we're here in Kansas City. There's the Chiefs stuff. I'm sorry.
Congratulations.
All right. There's the Chiefs stuff. And, but it's funny, we had the playoff game, and it was my wife literally was texting me. We're sitting in the living room on a Saturday. She's on the couch. I'm on the couch. She's on the chair, and she's texting me, hey, look at this car. Look at this car. Hey, did you see that car? We're going back and forth. And there's a particular car at a dealership. Matter of fact, it was like a Porsche Cayenne or something at an Audi store or something. And I was like, hey, do you want to go take a peek at that car? It was 1 o'clock. Okay. Now the game was at 3:30, and we're having people over. I'm supposed to pick up food by 3. So anyways, I'll try to make this short. Call the dealership up. It's 1 o'clock. She goes, do you think, I said, you want to go look at it? She's like, well, do you think we have time? Because we haven't really drove the Cayenne. I think we did the Macan, the smaller version, but not the Cayenne. I said, let's just go up there, see if we can drive it. And I'm like, I can get ready in about 20 minutes. We can be there by 1:32. We could drive it and drive home, get the food. She's like, all right, but why don't you call before we go? So I called the dealership, and they were like, of course, I'm on hold for a little bit. They transfer me. It sounds like it was a manager. I asked about the car. Yeah, the car's here. And then he transferred me again to another salesperson. And then that salesperson's like, yeah, it's here. But, let me ask you, are you wanting to come in soon? I'm like, well, yeah, I'd like to come in and test drive. He's like, well, so let you know, we're going to be closing early for the game. All right, we're going to be closing early. I said, oh, yeah. And I kind of laughed. He said, yeah, probably around 3 o'clock for the big game. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, but, if that doesn't work out for you, you can maybe come back on Monday. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, all right, thank you. And I hung up the phone. He didn't ask my name, didn't get my number. And again, we're talking now, it's not a high dollar car, but I mean, this is an Audi store. It's carrying, it's like, come on. I don't, but again, it doesn't matter if I'm looking at a 10 grand car.
Right.
I guess if I would have told him that's fine, I'm in a hurry too, he would have probably just said, come on up. But why is that for me to, and why wouldn't you just say, yeah, come on in? You know, we might be closing early today, but if you're interested in coming in the next 30 minutes or an hour or so, we have plenty of time for something. But he just blew me off, didn't give me a name, didn't get, and we never went back, you know, and that would have been maybe our ideal car. But I'm like, they just kind of burnt that bridge. And what my point being, above and beyond service, my point would have been if he would have said, hey, you know what, this is going on. If you can't make it by there, what if I could bring you by the car, bring it by to you on Monday, either your home or office? You know, I apologize for the situation, but maybe we could bring it by to you, you know, and that shouldn't be above and beyond. Because again, because even matter of fact, the guy answered the phone. He goes, oh, you're from St. Louis, because I have a St. Louis, but I'm in Kansas City. I said, no, I live in Olathe. He goes, oh, okay. So he knew I was close. I mean, literally, it was a 17-minute drive. So, I mean, for them to offer, hey, can we just bring it to you on Monday? And if he would have brought it to my office and had my wife, we're 6 miles from my house. My wife would have met me up here. That would have been above and beyond. We probably would have bought the car because, you know, anyways, that shouldn't be above and beyond, but to treat new car, used car buyer, and just, you know, have those ability to make the shopping experience easier for a customer. I mean, I don't care you're closing early for the playoff game. That's fine. But man, don't make it feel like you're outing the customer when they're trying to spend 40 grand, you know?
You know, it's, I keep going back to this report that we're doing. We asked customers why they bought from a particular store and, you know, or a particular used car from a particular store. And 22% of the time they said convenience.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. 22% of the time people said, I bought this particular car from this particular dealer because it was convenient. And that really just lines up with what you had just said, you know, and I think it's kind of it's an interesting way to approach this, that everything's so expensive right now. Everything should be, when possible, you know, we should be getting and encouraging the folks to offer top flight service. Because again, this isn't, you know, I have a restaurant around the corner. It's called Gallagher's. It's where I go watch football and stuff.
Yeah.
If I asked them to deliver me some fries that were $6 and they said no, I would like, I get it, $6, you know. It's no big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's no $6, man. And even if you throw in a Coke, now we're at $9. I get it why you're not going to leave, you know. But you're talking about $8, $9, man. So I think.
Well, that's to say they're not getting good experience. Nobody's getting good experience anywhere. So if you could just stand out a little bit, I mean, just or be 15 minutes late to watching the game. I don't know. But you know, what's funny is you brought up the 10% people buy that day.
That day, yeah.
And I'm looking at it. And first my second question, you guys, if you didn't look at it, I'd be curious at the average age of those cars. Because I think those might be age cars that were priced cheap that people said, oh, we better go grab that deal quick. Because then that's typically what happens in our internet department is we deal with the low hanging fruit, the customer that's willing to come in today, like that girl that wouldn't want to test drive my wife. I told my wife, I'm like, they're looking at you like you're at Six Flags wanting to ride all the rides. You got a season pass or something wanting to ride all the rides. I said, so they're getting aggravated with you. But you know, if they want the low hanging fruit, the customer willing to come in today and willing to buy today, and what's funny is that same 10%. What's the average closing percentage in the internet departments nationally?
Oh gosh,
10%.
It ain't 10.
Well, it's roughly, but you know that's almost the same as we always said about 10%. Some dealers say they do 20, some 5, but that's about the same 10% industry average. And it's like the dealerships and the management team seems to be, you know, a lot of times handling that low hanging fruit, not willing to work the other leads because these are the customers ready to come in and buy today. Let's work them. I called and emailed this customer, but not ready today, so they just push that one off and then deal with the ones calling and emailing them back.
You know, that's interesting you say that, because that kind of segues into something else that I wanted to talk to you about, because I know that you have some really insights, some really powerful insights about lead handling, you know, based on what leads are coming in and, you know, how that relates to particular pieces of inventory that are often aged. And, you know, for the folks who haven't heard, I would love for you to share your thoughts about like how people need to watch leads compared to inventory and how to manage them. And I think you know where I'm leading to.
Yeah. And I preface this the fact that, I started selling cars off the internet in 1997. So 20 something years of doing internet lead management, helping dealers analyze this stuff. It amazes me that, I'm like, gosh, how can we even think about this sooner? Um, we typically manage the leads based on the age of the lead. Like you said, there's a universal process, new or used. We get a fresh lead, we're calling and emailing every day for the first 7 days. And then by the time it's 2 weeks old, it's every other day. By the time it's 3 weeks old, it's once a week. And then by the time it's a month old, you're lucky if you're following up, but maybe once a week or every other week. But why? Why are we managing leads based on the age of the lead, which is irrelevant to the customer's buying cycle? To your point, if 10% are buying in a day, 90% are taking longer than a day to buy. So we don't know. Again, my wife and I, we could have been 6 months out. We could have been 2 days out. You didn't know where. So why are you managing me based on my age of the lead without understanding where I'm in my buying cycle? So then, as we're helping with inventory management stuff, it's like, well, hey, Mr. Dealer, and I do this all the time. You're heavy in large pickup trucks. Based on your current sale rate, example would be, let's say you have 30 large pickup trucks on your lot, and let's say used cars. It could be, but to your point, new cars too. You got 30 trucks. Based on your last 2 weeks, you've only sold 10. So for a month, if you want a month supply, that puts you on pace. If you sold 10 in 2 weeks, that puts you on pace to sell 20 in a month. You got 30 in stock. You're 10 units heavy. Trucks are going to bleed through if you don't do something about this. Now, if you had leads on these large pickup trucks, how often would you want to call and email the leads to get them moving? And most managers say, well, probably every day, every other day. Okay, well, here's a truck and they got a 40-day-old lead on it. What's your CRM telling you to do? You're probably
automated at that point,
maybe once a week, maybe at tops.
Yeah.
Or you have another 27-day-old lead on this truck. How often is your CRM telling? So why are you managing leads based on the age of the lead? It should be based on situations on your lot. And then contact them, higher frequency based on the problems on your lot. So if I got a truck problem, let's call and email them every day, every other day. So I don't have to drop my price and give up gross. Let's do that first. And regardless of the age of the lead. The other thing is what we call switch leads. So there's a lot of 60-70% of my active leads are on cars already sold. So
wait, say that again, please.
60 to 70% on average. I had dealers at 39%. I've had some as high as 80, but 60-70% of your active leads. So if I pulled 60 days of your leads, 60 to, let's say there's 100 of them, 60-70% of them are on cars that you already sold. So I submit a lead on the truck. 2 weeks later, truck sells. What are you doing with that lead? Are you offering an alternative? And if a dealer can master switch leads, that solves a lot of their problems too. You're getting leads from TrueCar, right? And the car sells. Well, recycle that lead. You already paid for it. You're already getting it. Well, in some cases you're paying for it, but now you're, let's call and email them. You already know their name, contact information. You know the segment they're interested in, large pickup truck, compact SUV, and then you know their budget, 40 grand. All right, well, you got another 40 grand trucks to switch that customer to. So if I have a large pickup truck problem and I have leads, I need to be calling and emailing those leads every day, every other day. But also let's go look, do I have any other large pickup truck leads that I could put on these trucks that, hey, this truck is priced at 40 grand. This lead was on a truck priced at 39 grand. It's sold. See if we can switch them to this 40 grand truck to get that sale rate up. So, but here's the other kicker was a lot of times BDC or internet people are gauged based on their activities. Okay. Yep. So maybe they're supposed to do 100 or 150 activities per day. So here's the other thing that we found, and this is just used car only. So we take these 3 internet people and we looked at their activity from yesterday. So Taylor was a name in one of them. They did 125 activities yesterday. So maybe we high five Taylor for great job, 125 activities. But when we looked at how many of those activities were done on cars in stock, only like 26%, 26 or 27 of them were actually done on cars still in stock. So basically it was like 78% of the activity Taylor did yesterday had nothing to do with the truck vehicles in my inventory that are currently in stock. My truck problem, right? Or my 30 to 35. So because there could be anniversary phone calls, service remind, hey, WEO reminders, whatever, cars in stock that sold. So activity is a good metric to be tracking for your department, but the activity on a car's actually in stock that affects your sale rate. So if you can increase the amount of activity done on cars in stock, then you're going to increase your sale rate, right? I'd rather him done 70 activities yesterday and all on vehicles that are in stock than the 120 that they did. Now that stuff has to be done, the anniversary phone calls, the birthday wishes, but should be at the bottom of the funnel.
See, what I'm hearing, what you just said made me think of for the first time, and it's kind of like alongside another thought that I had about a singular process, right? A singular lead handling process, right? That lead handling process doesn't sound like, because remember, you sold in the internet and I sold in the internet, right? I don't remember having a used car focus, not just a used car process for a used car lead, which I'm really upset that we didn't, because of the numbers and how quickly they buy, right? If I were to go back, that's probably the first thing that I'd look for is like how quickly are we responding to this particular type versus this particular type. But when I think of the example that you just gave of 125 activities and maybe 30% of them or whatever the exact number was working on inventory that was in stock, because that's what I heard. And the other is you're going through the process, right? You're just going through the process and you're marking it down. That doesn't really help a used car department that is dependent upon time and calendar and continuing depreciation. I think that there's probably I think that could be a very impactful conversation if we have time to really expand on what that could actually mean if there is a process that is created around not just the whole store, but the used part of the store.
Well, hence the name Lotpop. Now let's take POP, an acronym. We call it processes on purpose. Okay. Now, instead of just going through a 7-day call, 14-day email, 21-day phone call, that has no rhyme or reason, no purpose behind it. I'm just punching the clock like a factory worker. But imagine if you can have a meeting between your BDC internet people and the used car manager, and they go, "Hey, guys." The used car manager says to the internet, "Hey, here's what I need you to work on today. Our trucks are sitting. I need you to call and email all the truck leads. Our 30 to 35 grand vehicles, they're sitting too. I need you to work any leads we have on those. And then anything in our 31 to 45 age bucket. You guys work on that. And I'm going to get this other stuff moving. Let me know how it goes." Now they got a purpose behind their day. Right. Even if you want to spiff it, hey, any trucks that sell in the next 7 days, I'm going to give you guys $100 spiff on each one. I need you. Now it's two teams working together, and there's a purpose behind what they're trying to do other than left voicemail, 14-day email, 20-day phone call that has no rhyme or reason.
Has no rhyme or reason. And you said something earlier about bleed through. If somebody's working on those, you've got to what you need is a 20-day supply of trucks, but or what you need is 20 trucks, but you got more than that. Now you got 10 cars that are going to bleed through. And then what does that bleed through do? How does that hurt a store? Because how do you offload them?
Well, the other thing that we start tracking, and we'll be trending this out, is let's say my trucks aren't selling. I got 30 trucks. I go look over here. Let's say I got 60 leads on these trucks. And then I can look at what percentage of those leads haven't been contacted in at least 2 days. So let's say it's at 80% right now.
Okay.
Is that maybe why my trucks are sitting? Because a week or two ago, maybe it was down to 50%. So only half I was working the leads more consistently. Only half of them haven't been contacted in 2 days. Now that 50% has grown to 80% of my leads not being contacted in 2 days. So is that why my truck sale rate dropped off? Not my pricing, not the market, because I got the leads. Is it my activity that drove my sale rate down? So if I can increase the activity, does my sale rate go with it? So these are kind of new metrics that I think the industry needs to be exposed to, because all we're worried about is response time, activities per lead, closing percentage. Go back to that 60, 70% on sold cars. That throws closing percentage out the window as a metric until you understand how inventory is impacting it. Because again, if I got 100 leads and let's say 60 of them on cars that are already sold, that only leaves 40 customers that can buy a car today that matches what they're interested in. If I close 10% of that 40, that's only 4 deals. My CRM is going to say you have 100 leads and only did 4 deals. You're at a 4% closing percentage. Or that dealership that has 70% on sold cars, he only has 30 to sell. That's only 3 deals. He's got a 3%. The higher that number is, the closing percentage goes down. It's not because you're a bad operator. Your cars are moving fast. Right. It's the inventory. Yeah, the inventory is moving. Maybe you are a bad operator and you do need to increase calls and emails. but the inventory impacts that too. And so these metrics that we've tracked for 27 years, these KPIs, think about how much industry I was at another workshop and they're talking about how technology's changed, how many people have a 12 or a 10 or a 14 iPhone, and, but yet we're holding on to 27-year-old KPIs. Why hasn't
Oh
our
man.
metrics changed,
Oh man. Well, look, gosh, that is true. We are living in the modern age, but yes, yeah. You've given me a lot to think about. There's probably going to be some follow-up conversations and maybe a couple content pieces that we could talk about to really expand those out a little bit further. I don't want to monopolize all your time, but I do have 2 more questions for you, Jason.
Yeah, please, sir.
So one of them that I thought was pretty interesting is that, in our study, we realized that, or we learned that about 1 in 5 used car shoppers says that they're looking for something that's about 10 grand. Now, and I know, and the data tells us there ain't a whole lot of 10 grand cars listed for sale right now, right? What do we do as an industry to help, acquire vehicles or meet those shoppers' needs? How can we help meet the needs of somebody who's looking for a 10 grand car? Because there's so many of them, right? When they're in short supply, does that mean that we, one of the things that I always thought of when I had a shopper that was looking for a 10 grand car is I always asked them, why are you looking for a 10 grand car? That was the first question. It wasn't necessarily, what's important to you or, what color. I'd say, why are you looking for that? And, probably 70% of the time I'd hear, because I need a low payment, right? And they equate 10 grand with low payment. And now all of a sudden I recognize I don't have a 10 grand car buyer. I have a low payment shopper, right? Yeah. And that would help me because, back in, I'm talking about back in the days where getting a 10 grand car finance was virtually impossible, right? At least in the stores that I worked at. Right?
Or if it's short term, and so the payments are just as high as a long term.
Yeah, they're getting a $500 payment anyway, which is what they're trying to run away from, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about solutions to either collect inventory or to help people who are looking for those. What do you think we should be thinking about as an industry to help meet the needs of apparently that 1 in 5 shopper who, at least on the outside, says that they're looking for a 10 grand car?
Couple things, I guess. Obviously, try to acquire car private party acquisition. Dealerships need to be paying attention to that. Plus, service lane acquisition that will help you get those cars. Now you might get trade-ins on new cars that are these 10 grand or less, but I know new car shortages are out there. But typically, those type of 10 grand or less cars are probably getting traded in on that 20 grand used car. So to take those in, but also then the dealership to make the decision if they want to hold that car. A lot of times, some dealerships, just because of the profile they have, let's say, example, that Porsche store that I went into, right, more likely he's not going to carry a 10 grand car to keep their persona or their reputation as being a high-end store, not carrying that kind of stuff. So if your dealership's profile can hold those cars, because the other issue that dealerships will have with those is chargebacks and write-offs, and even though you say you sell it as is, customers are going to want to come back, and the headache dealing with that's just not worth it. So that's the biggest pushback. But I've had some really good successful dealerships that do the wholesale to the public buy here scenario, and more dealers through this whole COVID have done that. They used to wholesale a lot of these, now they're holding on to them and actually retailing them. But yeah, figure out what you can do to hold on to that market. And I guess as you're talking to used car customer leads, see if they do have a trade, because a lot of those customers probably do have a trade-in. They're just probably trying to sell it themselves, or they're going to give it to my nephew because he needs a car. And so try to weed that out of customers, because the average age on the road now is 12, 13 years old. Yeah. But there's more cars cars on the road registered in the United States than there ever has been, like a 50 million increase over the last 10 years. So there's more cars on the road. That means there's more used cars available. It's just you got to get them out of their hands. Private party acquisition, service drive would be the other biggest thing. And then do open yourself up to, maybe being that opportunity to sell those cars. Some dealers have a separate lot. They've done that, where they've actually distanced themselves, named it something else, and they put it over there to, do a retail piece that way. Again, a lot of dealers don't want to 1-star review because somebody bought a $8,000
Yeah.
car 6 months ago and, transmission went out. Now they got a bad review and an upset customer and blah, blah, blah. So there's that challenge, but I think there is, some dealers have worked it out.
Well, I think, as cars become more expensive, I think it's something we're probably going to have to pay more attention to. That $10,000 might end up being $15,000 or $17,000, but I don't anticipate that conversation going away anytime soon. I think as we look towards the future, creating a strategy for that shopper, but a real one, because these people aren't going away.
No.
This need isn't going away.
You look at the job market and you want to bring economy into this at all. The job market's strong. I think mostly because of inflation and the spouse and the kids are going to work now to help float the house and the payments. And so they're going to be, hey, my kid's got a job now and he's going to need a 8-10 grand car. My wife's back at work and she needs a car just to go back and forth, so they're going to look for something cheap. So if you have that ability to service those customers, and I think that's why you see that increase in that activity as people are going back to the job, and more offices are pulling you back into the office instead of letting you work remote. So
I'm sorry, Jason,
they got to get that car back. They got to get that car back that they maybe gave up a year and a half ago because they're working from home now and they don't need that extra payment. But now they got to bring it back. They can't afford that 30 grand car anymore. So they're going after that 10, 15 just to commute,
Yeah, those folks are going to be around. Well, before I let you go, what do you think is on the horizon for 2023 and what can dealers do to be in front of it?
I'll put my speculator hat on here. And this is, I hope I'm wrong scenario, especially with all these bank stuff going on right now. I really do think kind of the wholesale value, I think, will fall out come May. I think it looks like the shopper activity's already kind of dropped off. February, March, shopper activities peaks. And it's already looked like it might have peaked already, but we'll see. This is the time of year where it starts going down, and traditionally, and it's going down. And the reason why I say May or June wholesale comes down, because if March, we're just starting to see the drop off in activity, those people are still going to be buying to the end of March, going into mid-April as tax season wraps up. And by end of April, going into May, dealers are going to feel that pinch, but usually they don't react until it's painful. It won't be painful till then, about June. And by then everybody's going to be dumping and not buying and trying to clean up the mess that the tax season didn't clean up for them. And that's where I think we really get into this nutshell of and by then, who knows what's going to go with the economy. Again, these headlines on these tech banks, essentially crashing, and other banks, and the stock market's getting funky. I think it's going to be a really, I want to say 08, 09 type of vibe happening. But, I think it can be that way. So the best strategy is always just keep your inventory clean and clean. I'm not telling you to go hunker down the corner and go hide things down. But basically look at your last 2 weeks of sales, times it by 2, and that's your inventory levels. If you've sold 50 cars in the last 2 weeks, that's 100 in a month. So you got 100, keep your inventory around that 100 and stay at your current sale rate. Do 60 to 70% of those sales in the first 30 days, clear them out while they're fresh, while you can make money. That way you can always be a buyer. If the market goes down, I want to be buying in June. I want to have a clean inventory. So when everybody's dumping their stuff, I'll go buy it because people are going to be there to buy it, right? Maybe you go from 100 sales down to 80 sales or 75 sales because of the economy. Well, that's fine. Carry 75 and you're not jammed up with cars that you bought 3 months ago that you're $5 grand buried in, so, keep your inventory current level, and regardless of what happens, again, I hope I'm wrong, and everybody, if the economy blows up and cars are flying off the shelves, there is a shortage of used cars, but there's also a big shortage of shoppers. I'll tell you that. I've looked at the numbers. There's about 15 to 20% less cars, but there's also about 15 to 20% less people looking for them too. So it's kind of evens that playing field.
Now, do you think some of those people who just tapped out are like, who are folks who are like, hey, the market's just not for me right now? Or do you think the desire has left?
To your point, I think it's the want and need buyer. I think the need buyers are there. the once, if they're, you know, if they're in an industry that kind of booms in a slower market, right? If you're in that, you know, bankruptcy or foreclosure, I mean, those type of lawyer, I mean, there's an industry that will benefit from a down market, you know, so those will be the want people, but most people are only if they need it. And then I think they're going to hold tight to the cash flow, and the interest rates affect all this. So
Yeah.
you know, that's again another reason why we went ahead and bought the car. I said, well, I can wait another few months and I could probably buy it cheaper in June than I can buy it now. But if interest rates continue to go up, I'm going to pay the same.
Yeah. What did you save yourself?
Monthly. Right? Yeah. What I save myself. So I might as well just grab it now and ride this, you know, but, yeah, I think the interest rate thing is going to be, you know, dictating a lot of this too.
But for dealers who are out there who, you know, who smell something in the air, something might be coming up, your recommendation is be lean and tight.
Yeah. And because here's the thing, the other part I didn't mention is if anybody is coming into the market in that time with higher interest rates, I think a lot of people are going to be in negative equity territory. Oh, yeah. So they're going to have to go to new cars to get that 2.9 that they're offering, right, or the $5,000 rebate to keep that. Okay, I need a car, but I'm $2,000 buried and I don't want a 7% interest rate. Maybe a new car could be my option. So you might get some of these used cars, 7% go from used to new, to unbury themselves and get a better rate to keep their payments manageable. When they do that, then there's more trade-ins coming in again. So I think that's what we're going to, because usually June, July, or July, August is a summer sales event, summer sales-a-thons that are new car people do, OEMs do. And so I think that's where new cars is really going to kind of pick up to help that scenario out. And then more trades come in and wholesale values drop even more. So
it might not be a terrible time for a person who's looking to get into the market to get a used car. If, you know, if things go the way that you're thinking they are, you know, we're going to see a little bit of softening of prices for used cars, interest rates, who knows what interest rates are going to be, but you're expecting softening of prices and perhaps some more inventory.
Yeah. And if it's not an interest rate hike, if these banks are going to they're going to tighten up their restrictions. So it's loan to value, you know, so they're going to need more money down to secure the loans. So you might not go from a 7 to 8% rate. You might still get the 7. Say June would be the best time, maybe buy a used car. If values drop off June, July, but then you might have to come up with more money down for that loan to value ratio. So,
well, you know what? If they're watching this show, they're hearing it first. They're hearing it on March 13th, and they can save a couple bucks at a time so that they're ready for June or May or whatever it is. I have a strong suspicion that this is not the last time that we're going to be speaking on this conversation, Mr. Rice. I hope that the folks, with your permission, I would like to tell folks how to maybe get in touch with you if they wanted to learn a little bit more about you, your services, or Work the Facts. Is that cool?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the book there. jricelotpop.com. Also on Facebook or Instagram, or not Instagram, LinkedIn, but JASEN, because usually it's spelled ON. But yeah, workthefacts.com. They could go to that book site for, those are all the metrics for used car operations. So
that's his name. See, it's right there. It's Jasen Rice.
There you go.
It's right there. And for those who wanted to take a look at our automotive State of the Shoppers Trends Report, you can find it here. Dealer TrueCar.com. After year end 2022, you will see some of those stats that we have talked about. Jasen, as always, it is a pleasure. Thank you for everything that you do for automotive. Thank you for this. Thank you for the university. Thank you for the 20 groups. Thank you for being such a great partner and helping everybody get a little bit better, because at the end, we're all in this together.
Same to you guys. Thank you very much for your support.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.